This story began back when the girl was first reborn, and then time after time, she began to end up in different bodies of characters in short stories. This time, she became an albino. Her previous lives were not easy. She had hoped that this time something would change, but she became an animal that even the servants in this house use. The little albino was tired, wanted to lie on the floor, but they shouted at him again. You see, all he can do is chill and do nothing. Today she has a special mission. She was ordered to clean the office, which even the maids are afraid to approach. Apparently, that's why they dumped this task on him. The girl warned that if the albino refused, he could forget about today's dinner, but looking at that door, it was as if she herself was saying that it was better not to approach that corner. But still, you can't refuse. An order is an order. Besides, these maids never joke and always speak seriously. The albino just took the first step in that direction. Everyone around started laughing that she had fallen for the trick again and didn't even suspect anything. Although after entering there is a risk of not returning safe. The servants think that the animal doesn't understand their language, but they are wrong. The thing is, even if the animal knows it's a trap, there's a reason why it can't object to them. Molly couldn't come to terms with the rules of this world for a long time, but recently she realized that there really is no point in fighting with those who are higher in status. In this world, every beast is born with an ability called Eclipse, which can manifest in many forms such as ball energy, normal power, or divine power. Molly would like that too, but albinos like her are born with very weak eclipses and are considered inferior. They are not even able to take human form, but that would be very useful and interesting. Almost every day she complains that she ended up in this particular body because there are no privileges in it. The moment in history she is in now is in the middle of a novel. This novel starts with a Korean actress named Rachel, who crosses over to another world due to a divine mistake. There she became famous as the one and only saint. She eventually falls in love with the greatest dark mage, Karax Driblin, so much so that she sees no point in her life without him. In a desperate attempt to win his heart, she even offers him a church relic, a set of dice, and all she could get in return was the ghost of the Kyrax haunting her. They say a woman's resentment can bring frost even in summer, and so was able to turn this whole world into a land of eternal winter. With each passing day, the earth continued to reduce its population. The sacred and magical empires fought for each other's resources, which only made things worse. And it was at this point that Molly entered the world of the novel. And not somewhere there. She is stuck in the mansion of this Kyrax. As a servant, if she is caught at an inconvenient moment, she is finished. There is only one good thing in this body. It is alive. Because, for example, in a past life, Molly was a plant. And even earlier, just a bucket. In all time, there was only one most terrible life. Molly was in the body of a girl who was born into a dysfunctional family, where she was not loved so much that they sat her at the table with the rest of the family and forbade her to touch food. In this world, at least, she doesn't have to be afraid that she might die of hunger, and perhaps, if she holds out now, then good days will come soon. At least she wants to believe that. While Molly is calmly dusting this gloomy room, the door opens and she realizes that this is it. Now all that remains is to hope for a miracle. Someone asks in a menacing voice, who dared to enter his personal territory without permission, and these words immediately made you want to fall through the ground. She even started coughing. Her vision immediately went blurry. So much stress, and she was just asked to clean up here. Molly is very afraid to look in his direction. She slowly turns her head and already imagines how this someone is swinging his hand at her. The owner reminded how he asked that no one come in here, and the closer he gets, the stronger the very strong smell is heard. At first, Molly didn't even think about who it could be, but then she looked closer and realized that it could only be one person. Black hair, turquoise eyes. These are the features of the owner of the estate, the clan of Saber-Toothed, whom everyone fears like the devil. She thought she would see some scary person, but in appearance he is an ordinary guy who is even pleasant to look at, although maybe this is a case where appearances are deceiving. He lifted her by the skin and wondered what this child could be doing here, not even realizing that she actually understood him perfectly well. Molly began to prepare herself to tell him at least something, so at least there would be a chance to survive and leave here alive. She replied that she was a maid, and also completely by accident she started working here, so she doesn't know some of the rules. The guy wondered how she could speak in animal form, because it was physically impossible, especially with such a jaw structure, and then asked who ordered her to clean here, because this room is closed for cleaning and everyone should know this. Molly replied that the other servants asked her to do this, and she talks to him with her eyes closed so that he would feel at least a little sorry for her. So far, the guy surprisingly hasn't said a single bad or offensive word to her. It's hard to believe, but he's even kinder to her than those maids. Maybe he's not as bad as they say. And meanwhile, he asks her what her name is, where her relatives or friends are, but she doesn't have anyone like that. Strangely, he thought that since she had no connections or support, this was what he needed. If only he knew what it meant and why he immediately thought of it. He already says that he could take her in as a pet and make sure that she no longer has any responsibilities here, and that only those he hires to do the cleaning do the work. All this just sounded quite good and not even surprising. But he also said that he had a condition. She had to become the daughter-in-law of his family. Molly didn't quite understand how to understand this, where he got such thoughts from and how he imagined it. A saber-toothed aristocrat raising a daughter-in-law sounds unusual, and she doesn't even know what to answer him. Molly thought that maybe she had confused him with someone else, so she asked him just in case if his name was Mr. Songami. She explained that she just usually sees him from behind and doesn't really ask who's there and who, and only knows people by name but not by face. He replied that his name was Kyrix, which meant that she understood everything correctly, and this information sent shivers down her spine. Before this, she could only imagine that it could be that guy, but now she is absolutely sure of it. The mere thought that he is the same last scoundrel who exploited the Rachin makes me want to hit him with this little paw on this impudent face. Now the question arises, why would someone like him want to make her his daughter-in-law? It seems that soon her life will change beyond recognition. In Driblin, there is a special tradition. From a young age, the family must bring a future daughter-in-law into the house in order to raise her together with the candidates for the family's heirs, after which she must marry the one who has the dominant pheromone. This is how the election of the next head of the Driblin family takes place. At least they don't say so, but there is one problem. In simple words, the heirs, in whom the dominant pheromone awakens. There may be 2, sometimes even 4. Because of this, they all compete fiercely with each other, and in the end, it is the daughter-in-law who chooses the next head of the family. Just think, he wants to trust her with such an important role. Despite all her regressions, it's even better than everything that was. Suddenly, from this day on, her life will become better, as she wanted all this time. Or maybe everything will go the other way around. She will end up in a trap. So it is better to feel everything out so as not to run into problems. Molly wasn't shy. She asked him what was good about becoming his daughter-in-law, or rather, how her life would be better. He replied that it would probably be enough for her to live in luxury and eat well, and he would also pay for her treatment if necessary and try to find some friends. And yet, she is interested to know why he is doing her such an honor. It shouldn't be as simple as he says. The guy admitted that he just needed a good child, who they could influence the annoying old people, and she was perfect for him in this regard. Only everything sounded too suspicious, Molly wondered. Did she really look like someone who could be gotten rid of at any moment? After that, he asked if she had any more questions. At first, she said that was all. But then she remembered something and asked if she could ask one more question. Karak replied that he would try to answer, but made no promises. She wants to ask if she understands correctly that she will become his daughter-in-law under a contract. Because if he decides that she is useless and throws her out, then it is better to start making plans for the future now and be ready for anything. During the time that it will be useful to him, he will be able to accumulate as much money as he can, because wasting time in vain will be very risky and wrong. At first, he didn't even know how to react to this. He began to look away, and when he realized that this was causing suspicion, he said that he doesn't know yet how everything will work out, but after that, it definitely seems like some kind of trap. Suddenly, he called his assistant Nina. She came up to him a second later, asked how she could be of help, and when she noticed the albino, looked at her with such a look as if she wanted to destroy her on the spot, like some fly that had entered this house. He saw this and told her that Molly was going to be his nephew's daughter-in-law and he would introduce her at the family meeting tomorrow, so Nina had better address her with respect. The gentleman asked to tidy up Molly and feed her, then left, and Nina realized what she had just heard. Nina realized that she needed to make urgent corrections, introduced herself as a beast-like cheetah, and promised that she would serve her faithfully and truly. For such a predator, an albino is like prey with one tooth. Her sweet voice does not hide at all what danger she can pose for her. Molly feels terribly awkward, and she still has to spend the whole day with her. In general, the albino feels that she needs to act carefully, otherwise she will simply be eaten. Nina is already helping her take a bath. She has filled a bowl with warm water and is trying to be as gentle as possible, as expected. All this time while they were here, Molly was silent, and Nina is worried that she already did something wrong. The other thing is that Molly also thinks that Nina doesn't talk to her for no reason. She even thought that it was probably because she was ordered to serve an albino, which could be humiliating. The girl was the first to speak up. She asked if everything was okay because she could see that it was definitely not. Molly admitted that Nina began to help her. She was a little scared even when she looked into her eyes. The girl couldn't even imagine that this was the problem. She began to tickle the albino without words to show that they could actually be friends. It looked so cute that Molly even laughed because no one has tickled or played with her for a long time. It's very good that the assistant is trying to make friends with her. It will make things easier for everyone. The girl also said that she had never seen a beastman speak in beast form, which means that this creature is incredibly wise. Because humans and animals have completely different jaw structures, animals are usually unable to speak when they are in animal form. The albino said that it was very nice to hear compliments. She thanked for it, and in general, her health became much better. Nina added that on top of all this, Molly is also very charming, and also apologized for all the times she treated her badly. Without thinking, the girl also said that an albino is like a cake with wild strawberries on top. She would bite it once, and right after these words, Molly slipped out of the small bath. Because hearing that from a cheetah isn't very reassuring, especially considering the fact that there's no one around. The girl explained that she was just joking. That's how they joke. So after a couple of minutes, everything was fine. After a couple of hours, it got a little colder. Nina lit the fireplace, made comfortable conditions. If only the young lady was happy. Then she left her alone so that Molly could rest, and it was a very good decision. That's exactly what she was missing right now. She had already forgotten the last time she felt so good, knowing that she didn't have to do anything but live for her own pleasure and eat on schedule. It had been an eternity since she had been lying like this on a soft bed, not thinking about anything and not rushing anywhere. Even though I accidentally came across such an opportunity, it's still too early to relax because everything can change at any moment. On top of everything else, it's important not to forget that this is the villain's house and there's still a family gathering ahead from which it's unclear what to expect. Molly still doesn't understand who would need an albino like her. She sees a catch in everything. All that remains is to do everything so that they see her as a desirable daughter-in-law, but just in case something forces her to leave, you need to save up money so that in the future, you can depend only on yourself. Even though Molly can't turn into a human, like Nina said, a talking sable is a rarity, and even though K-Rex may think she's just a normal kid, Molly has read the original story and knows the secrets of the Holy Empire. If she uses her knowledge correctly, she will be able to avoid exile. Well, at least for now, starting from tomorrow. She will slowly collect valuable things, little by little. Preferably these should be small and light things that she can take with her at any time. She really doesn't want to wander around selling stuff anymore, so she needs to hold out a little longer this time. Meanwhile, the next day came. For breakfast, she was served warm milk as well as bread with goat cheese. Now that she's not just a servant, they started to treat her differently, just like a mistress. Everything is hot, delicious, fresh. There is not a single missing piece. She eats it with such pleasure that even Mr. K-Rex and Nina went to watch it at the stage. The only thing on her mind now is that she is in real paradise. She hasn't enjoyed life as much as she does now for many years. She doesn't even have anything to complain about, and it's just breakfast and a good attitude. K-Rex also connected his care, began to wipe food from her cheeks. She even felt like his child for a second. It's impossible to believe that this person can be so sensitive. Probably almost no one has seen him like this. It's no wonder that girls fall in love with him. Just look at that look and that grin that drives you crazy. Anyway, we can't let our guard down now. In the original story, he used his dead relatives to create an armies. And he also hunted his brother's heirs and didn't see anything wrong with it, which means his true face could show up at any moment. The mere thought that tomorrow he might behave differently is a little scary, but there is no escaping it. Molly thought that while she could, she needed to enjoy today and solve all the problems as they came. Because if she was afraid of what might happen later, she wouldn't have a single minute of peace. He started telling her something, but because of obsessive thoughts, she doesn't even remember what the conversation was about. And she is constantly distracted by food that attracts her gaze. She wants to look at this bun from all sides, especially where the cream flows, All these years, she didn't have normal food. She could have a snack once every few days, something spoiled, and it was a holiday. So a bun and a glass of milk are a kind of luxury for her. Something that she can admire even just by looking at the table, not to mention eating it all in one go. The guy also started saying that he would buy some meat for her a little later because he thought that she wouldn't be satisfied with just buns and milk. But if he fed her such a breakfast at least once a day, she would be the happiest anyway. At that moment, they bring her freshly baked cookies, and for her it's like a whole gift for which she even wanted to thank. She sees this in front of her, she can't stop admiring it, and yet everyone else doesn't even realize how much it means to her. She can't remember the last time she ate sweets. In fact, all this time she had a forced ban on all desserts. And now she can only say how much sweets she needs per day, and they can bring them endlessly. There is only one question spinning in her head. Why is everyone so kind to her? What is the catch? It can't be that this person in reality is different from how he is described in the book. He literally arranged a heavenly life for her. When Molly had already had some food, he announced that he planned to take her with him to a family gathering that day. She already forgot about it. She just relaxed. He already ruined all the harmony that she didn't even want to eat anything anymore. It's strange that she somehow missed this moment. After all, she is here on the condition that she will become his daughter-in-law. In the original story, family matters were often decided at family meetings, so this meeting most likely depends on whether she will be accepted as his daughter-in-law or not. If she can't prove her worth, then this place could be lost forever, and whether she can handle it or not is anyone's guess. She's already all upset. She's afraid that everything will be somehow bad. She does not believe that her life can become better in one day without any problems. He can reassure her as much as he wants, constantly telling her that old people have fewer rights than he does. But until life gets better, Molly won't believe that it's possible. Kyrax thinks it would be better if she familiarizes herself with the details, so he asked her to leave as soon as she's ready. Instead of answering something like, "Okay, I'll try to hurry up," she started taking the remaining cookies and offers Nina to try at least one. Usually, servants are not allowed to eat food that is meant for others, but this time the master allowed her to have cookies. But only once. The girl doubted. For a long time, she even thought that this was some kind of test and already began to refuse. But since even the master allowed her to do it, she gladly took the cookie and thanked Cutie Molly. After breakfast, Molly came to the conclusion that from now on, the only one she can rely on is Kyrax and only him. She even thought about offering him some cookies, but he took it as some kind of bribe and looked at her with a grin. In the end, he agreed, took the cookie with joy. But since he is now watching his diet, he will not be able to eat more than one. He likes that. Although at first Molly was very constrained and shy of everyone, now she has begun to feel more confident, little by little, and it is visible. If only he knew that the whole point is that she just wants to please him and is doing everything she can for now. He is already interested to see how she will behave at today's meeting. After all, it is a very serious event, especially for her. And in the meantime, the meeting had already begun. From the first seconds, as soon as they saw her, everyone started asking if this was a joke. They have so many candidates that now they will have to turn everyone down for no reason simply because the guy has already made up his mind. Of course, their objections were expected, but to such an extent, this is exactly what Molly was afraid of. She is already uncomfortable here and wants to leave. These people must hide how much they hate her. They even ignored the seats next to her. Everyone sits every other chair, or even a couple of chairs. Initially, Kyrax didn't want to start a showdown here in front of the child. But since they dared to behave like that, I had to make it clear that the mongrels decided to be too loud today, and it wasn't necessary. The guy didn't think that everything would turn out like this. Apparently, it won't work out well with these people. Molly has no idea how it will all end because even if the guy manages to defend his position, it is unlikely that all these people will treat her well later. You can expect anything from them. They can start putting spokes in her wheels, setting her up, and they know how to do that. Meanwhile, someone else came. This guy's name is Lapiran. He is the assistant of the head of the family who can't stand bad air, and here he is exactly like that. He started using a neutralizing spray with pheromones so that he could breathe normally here. The situation is only getting worse. It's a good thing the guy hid Molly a little because otherwise she would have turned all red and wouldn't have lasted until this moment. Then the head, the father of Kyrax, came, but for some reason the guy doesn't greet him. They even started reminding him about it. The man was unhappy with his behavior, even called his son rude, and asked how long he would behave like this, to which he replied that until he felt better. There is rarely mutual understanding between them. All they do is quarrel and try to show who can take offense longer. And then the head of the family notices Molly. He looked at her in such a way that she almost had a heart attack. She was so scared that she turned pale and almost lost consciousness. The man asks what is in his son's arms, and his assistant answers that it is an albino who has been living there for some time. The guy asked not to pay attention, then said that it was his niece, and after that his father wanted to look at her even more because before this house, that it was an ordinary animal. At that moment, she just wanted to curl up into a ball so as not to take part in this anymore. She has no idea how a man will react to her, but something inside tells her that he can very easily order her to be gotten rid of. This look makes you want to freeze in one place and fall through the ground. It's simply impossible to endure it. She didn't even notice how she accidentally screamed and asked not to eat her, and the others just laughed at her, especially the assistant, who couldn't help but laugh out loud, although there was nothing funny about it. If he were in her place, he would not be in the mood for jokes. But in the meantime, Lapiran finally suggested getting down to business. Molly was a little mistaken. She took it as if she was smiled at, but unfortunately, it was a little bit different. Meanwhile, one of them approaches the chief and asks him to answer the question of how he imagines an albino becoming their daughter-in-law, because most of them here can't imagine it at all. It is outrageous to him how one can, out of the blue, bring here an albino beast of unknown origin and claim that it should become a daughter-in-law. Someone else joined in and started joking that, at this rate, the next generation would become albinos. The man immediately asked them to stop because it was impossible to listen to. He says that he doesn't remember giving permission to anyone to speak, especially since everyone present here should be able to discuss something differently, more politely. Even if someone doesn't like something, or it's been a long time since he's called them to a meeting. Everyone has forgotten how it should happen, and it makes him very angry. Anyway, he partly agreed with them, so he advised his son not to act so rashly without any reason, and then asked him what he had in mind. Kirax answered very briefly, and to the point that he had no desire to share this, and everyone else perceived this as impudence. After all, they gathered here to discuss this matter, and he behaves in such a way, too inappropriately, as if they themselves behave differently. So that they wouldn't think that they could offend him in any way, he said that one more such statement and he would simply leave here. Out of the blue, everyone started to be touched and compliment the albino. Molly was already confused because they were saying it with such an expression on their faces, as if they wanted to say something else. And it's as if they're behaving this way just so the boss doesn't get angry with them. There's such chaos going on around her that she doesn't understand where it's all going. After some people started complimenting Molly, her owner said that foul language is detrimental to a child's emotional development, so he really hopes that they will continue to show such commendable restraint. And he also added that this child has no school or religious ties. In other words, unlike other candidates, this child is pure and has never given a single bribe in his entire life to be accepted anywhere. And he believes that this one reason is enough for everyone to agree with him and accept him as a daughter-in-law without unnecessary arguments. Someone replied that they recommended candidates with sincere intentions of the Driblan family. And he also had a question. Wouldn't it be appropriate for a woman with outstanding abilities to become his daughter-in-law? Another began to say that now that Lady Adriana had died and the place of the young head was vacant, the gentleman, of course, had authority, but... And here he did not have time to finish the sentence. The guy interrupted him and asked if they had all forgotten his warning. He had told them more than once not to pronounce his sister's name so casually. This time he warns for the last time that if something like this happens again, they will all regret it very much. And he doesn't care who does it. Everyone will take the blame. Molly didn't think he'd get so angry just from mentioning his sister's name. Now, she understands what happened after Adriana died. Adriana Hera Dribbles, Kyrax's older sister, a genius among geniuses who was born with a dominant pheromone. After she inherited the title of young lady, Adriano demonstrated absolute perfection in all her endeavors, politics, business, ball handling, and more. She was poised to become the next head of the Driblan family, breaking the long-standing tradition that only men could hold the title. But such a brilliant life was suddenly cut short on the battlefield. Molly thought that Kyrax must still miss his sister terribly, which was probably why he wouldn't accept the young lord's position, deliberately leaving it vacant. And in the meantime, since they are talking about this place, the guy wants to make a statement to someone. If Molly becomes his daughter-in-law, as her father wanted, he will immediately inherit the position of the young head. This statement simply left everyone speechless. People couldn't believe they heard it with their own ears. Even my father didn't quite understand how he was saying this, and thought that he must have just misheard it. Molly is also confused that he went so far just to make her his daughter-in-law. The guy says that the ability to break his stubbornness and put him in the place of the young leader, this was all done by Molly, so she is wonderful and ideal for this position. The more he talks about her, the more ashamed and uncomfortable she becomes, and in the meantime, almost no one agrees with him. Kyrax asked, "Didn't they say a few minutes ago that someone with outstanding abilities would be acceptable? Considering how deeply they all care about the well-being of the family, he hopes they will find this satisfactory." Molly at this moment thinks that Karax is not joking, because he clearly warned them, and everything converges to the fact that he really intends to make her his daughter-in-law. She just doesn't like that everyone keeps looking at her. It's terribly awkward, but with a guy next to her, she feels more or less normal. And then the man spoke to her. He saw how his son cared about her and seemed to be no longer so categorical about her. The father thought that since his son had finally, after so many years, announced his intention to inherit the young head's post, he could not reject his wish. It's obvious to Molly that this is a show for the elders. This look of his, he's asking her to demonstrate her abilities in this way. Then she thought the time has come. She needs to show them herself. Now this is the only way to survive in this place. The operation called Live and Prosper. Dribblin family daughter-in-law will start right now. She herself did not expect that this moment would come so quickly. Molly turned to everyone and asked them to pay some attention to her, and also promised that it would not take much time. Then she said that she actually has one secret ability, as they all already understood what she was talking about, as if hinting who wants to see it. This is a very important moment. Her paws are shaking a little, but since she has already started, we need to continue. Molly asked to trust her, and then first insist that they buy some land and promise that no one would regret it. Everyone immediately became silent. No one understands what is happening, and the head of the family understands that he needs to talk to her. The albino began to explain that if they wanted, she could name a specific place and the reason why they should buy the land. The man never ceases to be amazed that she is not only able to speak, but can also give investment advice, and he is also touched by such a small creature. Only Molly expected a different reaction from him, a more serious one. So she decided to act on her own, turned to her assistant, and asked if he by any chance had a map with him so she could show everything clearly now. She asked to reveal this card. The most interesting part begins. Now everyone will understand that she is not joking at all and understands perfectly well what she's talking about. To begin with, she thanked them for giving her the opportunity to speak, and then asked the head to look at one place where he should buy land. It is Roxoria, a large land, but it is not so valuable that you can just thoughtlessly buy it just because some albino advises you to do so. In the past, this land was famous for growing wheat on it. It is very fertile. One of the heirs even offered this territory to Rakini. Molly tries to dispel their doubts because this land grows wheat beautifully. It is cold now, so it seems useless. But this will soon be corrected, because spring will come soon. And these words made people freeze, because they had long since looked like they couldn't expect any spring. Some statements seem too fantastic. Even Karax is already a little ashamed that she said so much. One of these people began to say that it was obvious that the albino was born after the saint's rage, and she could not know what spring is. The man asked how she could know what spring was. He really wanted to believe her, but after such words it was very difficult. She replied that everyone understood her correctly. When spring comes and they can do farming there, so it is better to buy this land for a low price right now, before it is too late. He still doesn't understand how she can be so confident, but inside he still has hope that maybe a miracle will happen and all her words will turn out to be true. Now Molly doesn't know what to say. She had no idea that things would go this far. She can't tell that she knows the future and has memorized every chapter of this novel. She is already mentally asking for help from Kyrix because she is afraid to say something unnecessary, although he also has a lot of questions for her, like everyone else. All this time, it seemed to him that she had everything under control. Now the guy thinks he can help her. After all, now this is his main mission. He started saying that Molly could be a prophet, as strange as it may sound now, especially from his side. And he also said that there was something else that he had not mentioned, namely that this child was actually a saint. These people stop being surprised by every word that these two say. They simply have no words anymore, only emotions remain. They all heard so much today that it seems unsurprising but still impressive. Molly was really stressed because she asked him for help and he just ruined everything. At least that's what she thinks. It is no longer possible to predict how it will all end. The situation is getting worse and everything can change at any moment. As a result, chaos reigned in the meeting room. Some elders did not believe Karax, and even more so, Molly. But there were also naive elders who believed his words, although the albino still does not understand whether this is good or bad. Perhaps some believed it because of the huge number of gifts that came in every day for the entire week from that day on. There are so many of them that the servants no longer knew where to find a place to put everything away. There are so many of these boxes that they already form a rather large mountain. Molly is worried that it's all because of Karax. He shouldn't have said that she's a saint because it's not true and she might get caught. It looks more like he wanted to set her up, although why would he do that? He should be helping her, on the contrary. She thought he had some kind of plan, but he just left her alone and disappeared, saying that she could just pretend. And if anyone asked, she could just insist on her own, as if no one would do anything to her anyway. The albino is confused about what to do next. There are so many problems around that she can no longer just not think about anything, so that she wouldn't be so bored. Nina started talking to her. When the girl asked why Molly was sad, she answered that she wasn't sad. She was just angry. Nina started to suggest playing some game, but she doesn't have time for that now. The albino just wants to be alone. The girl still doesn't go anywhere. She sees that if he leaves her here alone, someone will start to get very depressed, or maybe even worse. Later, Molly found out that Nina is Karek's only maid. At first, she heard this. She thought how he can control one person like that and mentally condemned Karek's. But after listening to the whole story, she was amazed. The truth is that Nina is a hired villain who was sent to destroy her master, no matter how it sounds. But he caught her trying to do it and then forced her into a 10-year contract. At this point, Molly thought she wanted to draw something, so she asked her assistant to bring her some sketchbook. In just a minute, the colored pencils and paper were in place. Nina became interested to see what Molly was going to draw, because she had never seen her doing such a thing before. In fact, she is not going to draw anything. The albino is going to make a plan for her future in comfort. She plans to play the saint and officially become Driblin's daughter-in-law. One of the heirs will eventually become her husband. Anyway, they'll be crazy about Rayhan later, so she probably doesn't have to worry about who she'll marry. She has to prevent the fall of the Driblin family. Molly worked so hard to become a lady. She can't be homeless again. No way. After that, she will create her own group, completely unrelated to her husband. And it would also be great if her family life came to an end. Then she will have to deal with the root cause of the fall of Driblin. And no matter how you look at it, the root of evil is that the original story is a dark novel. In the original, the plot centers on the heroine Rahin's journey to save, heal, and work through the protagonist's childhood traumas. But if the main male characters hadn't suffered as children, things could have been much better. List of main male characters. Number 1. Dante and the only direct heir. Number 2, Yuri, is Adriana's youngest son. He has royal blood from the magical empire in him. Number 3, Gerd. Although he is not Adriana's son, but Gerd, a close relative in whom the blood of the royal family flows, lichen beams. Considering that Rahan is now sealed and she meets the protagonist as a child, now is the time. Well, everything is ready. The plan was made in a matter of minutes. It's just a pity that its implementation will take much more time. First point, become the daughter-in-law of the Driblin family. Second point, increase your political power and not be afraid of exposure. Third point, build friendly relations with the family before the appearance of Rakin. Fourth point, save the broken heroes, then Rakin will do. If everything goes according to plan and turns out in the best possible way, then you couldn't think of anything better. The main thing is just to believe in it. Anyway, even though the plan is more or less, she is bothered by the thought that rarely does anything go strictly according to plan. It is impossible to be sure of anything, so it is better to prepare for problems in advance and not be afraid if something goes wrong. Before starting this hard day, you first need to recharge with sugar because without it, the day will start badly. You need to somehow lift your spirits, please yourself with something. Suddenly, this is the last good thing that happened to her that day. When spring comes, her role will be confirmed, and the number of people who believe in her will increase. Later, Mai Or will try to start selling information taken from the original to prolong his position. There weren't supposed to be any guests today, but there was a knock on the door and Nina started to remember, had she really forgotten that someone was coming to visit them today? She doesn't understand who it could be. Molly has no idea either, but ignoring this person would also be wrong, whoever it is. When they asked who was at the door, Lapiran introduced himself, apologized for the sudden visit, and said that the chief wanted to see Lady Molly. Naturally, the albino was very happy. She wants to resolve all these matters as quickly as possible, and even promised herself to try to do everything faster than such matters usually go. She replied that she was here, absolutely free, and of course would be happy to spend her time with him. Unlike her assistant, Molly feels that everything will go well. She is full of energy and is not shy about showing it. The assistant offered to take her to his master, and she was so looking forward to it that a little more, and she would have started going there herself. She believes in herself very much because spring has come, and it is time to start selling information about the Holy Empire. One of the assistants asked the gentleman to look out the window because everything was happening exactly as the albino said. They hadn't seen small plants growing through the snow for many years. or the snow melting, or anything like that on the street. It looks like the beginning of something new, and in the meantime, they are discussing that new shoots were found in Roxoria. The idea was suspicious, but buying the land there was a great move. From now on, the popularity of this land will rapidly grow, and all those who doubted it now want to apologize to Molly in a great way. The gentleman didn't have time to answer anything, as the assistant with the albino came to them, whose opinion had changed beyond recognition. Now everyone will listen to her words, and whatever she says, now her word is much more valuable and weighty. Molly started jumping up and down in this guy's arms, and at that moment, all he could think about was that she wouldn't fall because they would throw her on him. The albino is very happy. She lit up the street with her smile. No worse than the spring sun, because everything is going exactly as she planned. She has no reason to be sad today, at least for now. The man was also very happy to see her. He smiled back at her and even started asking how she was feeling. Molly immediately noticed how the attitude towards her had changed dramatically. And this is not surprising, because it could not have been any other way. Before getting down to business, she was offered a glass of milk to drink because they found out that she really liked it. Only the cup is a little big. It didn't give her low and smaller ones forever, so that she could easily drink as much as she wants, but now there will be some problems with this. As soon as the man saw how hard it was for her to handle this cup, he immediately understood everything and promised to ask her to prepare special cups and saucers for her. It was very nice of him. And he also added that this is the least they can do for the treasure of this family, and they haven't called it that yet. Everyone is so warm with her that now it is important not to disappoint these people, because it is clear how much they are counting on her. Although she was a little reluctant to portray herself as a fake saint before, she now enjoys this role. Molly didn't think she would go this far. The main thing to remember is that any mistake now can cost a lot. When they had already started talking a little, the gentleman explained that the reason he had called her so suddenly was that new shoots had recently been discovered on the Roxoria land, and so he wanted to ask her a few more questions, to which she replied that she would be happy to tell him everything that interested him. As Molly said, their family bought the entire area, and since it was winter just a week ago, the price was very low. They plan to use this land, so it is important to know whether they can cultivate the land and turn the area into farmland. He heard that they used to grow wheat there, so since spring has come, it would be logical to start cultivating the field. And Molly, at this moment, thinks that he seems to understand nothing about this because there is a way to increase the value of this land faster. The albino realized that they needed to explain a lot of things. They themselves would only waste their energy and time in vain. And also, in his gaze, it is very noticeable that he seems to be testing her abilities by asking such obvious questions, although it may be that he really does not understand anything about this. The main thing now is to talk to him correctly. Any uncertain word can work against her, and they will think that it was just a coincidence that she guessed right and this might not happen again. It turns out that she has no choice but to pass this test to the end. Molly replied that she can voice it. He is already interested to hear what she thinks about it, and the albino is currently using these few seconds to the maximum to come up with a normal answer. She answered with a very confident and calm face that they had chosen an interesting option. But it seemed to her, now it would be better to put this land up for auction and sell it to the royal family for a very good high price before it's too late. In Roxoria, a sign appeared that determined spring. In the original story, this tiny sprout shook both the Empire of the Magicians and the Bound Empire. The territory of Roxoria should now increase significantly. All these signs and more indicate this. They could cultivate the land themselves, but rumors would spread that Driblin had monopolized the spring without permission, and the harvest would never be able to feed the entire empire. So the decision must be made very quickly, without hesitation. While everyone is just looking at it, they need to sell the land as quickly as possible at a high price. This is the most profitable option for everyone. Molly explains that the best thing to do is raise the price as high as possible, so high that everyone is shocked. And he is so impressed by this idea that he doesn't even understand where she got such knowledge from. The albino laughed and then said that it was all very elementary, so while her brain was working so well, she should use it. After all, Driblin's profit is her profit too. In the original, the Driblin family were villains, but they are still strict about results and rewards, which means that the higher the profit, the more money Molly will get too. Perhaps she'll even manage to win more favor while she's at it, and in the meantime, she's asking for another chance to say something. The head is ready to listen to her, but only if it is something important. And she answered with a smile that, of course, she would not waste their time on trifles. After he agreed to listen to her, Molly concentrated, because now she needed to try not to lose face and interest them even more. Molly reminded that as she had already said, luck was on her side, to which the man replied that it was so, because, as she had said, a shoot had grown. The albino began to assure that soon not only Roxoria, but the whole world will see spring. And again, it is necessary to quickly sell the land before it is too late. One of her aides asked her what she could say about the fact that the royal family would likely be furious when they found out the price, and she only replied that he was an excellent mind reader. Everyone is already interested in watching this outstanding spectacle. The idea is already captivating, but still many think that Molly will screw up and everything will not be as colorful as she promises. And the albino accidentally laughed like some kind of villain and wondered why she gets along so well with these scoundrels who don't even hide the fact that they don't believe in her. In fact, it's not just about the money, but also about the connections with the royal family. So for now, things are not as bad as they could be, but not very good either, because the plan is not yet complete. Molly asked him if there were seeds and fertilizers in Driblin. The man at first did not understand why she was asking this, because she had just offered to sell the land. And then he realized that since spring would come to the whole country, he could start selling the seeds, fertilizers, seedlings that they had researched. Molly praised him because he was smart. Due to the new climate, now everyone will need seeds and fertilizers, so there is an opportunity to capture the market and make a good profit. And on top of all that, Driblin will hit the jackpot. The reason she says all this with such confidence is because in the original Driblin excelled in producing military equipment such as golems and various others. But in truth, they also had a very deep knowledge of agriculture. This is because the current Duchess, a spirit mage, made a contract with the spirit of the land to help the starving citizens. She has long been studying all possible ways of growing crops indoors. Thanks to this research, the seeds that the Driblin family possesses are much stronger than anyone else's, and this harvest may mean more than just crops. The only problem is that this information, only the Driblin family knows this fact. They may start to suspect her, and it may happen very suddenly. Meanwhile, the man says that she is very capable, but it doesn't seem like she made this proposal without any prior knowledge. It is important for him to know where she got this information and where she got this idea from. Molly thought that no matter how smart she was, the meaning of this thing that no one had told her was being forced upon her by suspicion. Well, now she really had no choice. You need to use Kyrax, so she replied that, to be honest, she learned all this from Kyrax. To which the man replied that someone so wonderful deserved an award. Molly didn't understand what he was talking about at first, so she asked him to explain how to understand it. He says that Driblin is a house that greedily takes everything it wants, but nothing is given for free. She can set the value of her achievements herself. This experience will prepare her for one wonderful day when she will lead this family. After these words, she thought that since he was saying this, it meant that the man had resigned himself to the fact that she would take this place. She was always a vagabond, never had her own corner, and now her life has changed a lot. She finally found this corner, and it is so big that it will be enough for someone else. For example, if she meets someone, after that, he asked her again how much she thought her achievement was worth. And Molly thought that the child they wanted to see next to them was not just an obedient and reliable child. This is someone they raised with purpose. They only want one thing, a worthy daughter-in-law for the Driblin family. Maybe this is also a test of her character, or at least something similar to it if she understood everything correctly. In that case, it seems to her that it is worth showing ambitions worth this family. She said that what she wants, this is Driblin. And immediately after these words, everyone seemed to be speechless because they expected to hear anything from her, but not this. The man even thought that he had misheard it because she could not have said it so boldly, especially in his presence, and seriously, so that no one would think that they had heard it. She said again that this was indeed what she wanted. They looked at each other with such glances that it seemed that everything could change at any moment, so that it would be impossible to fix anything. He looks at her with such a look that it makes you want to fall through the ground and go back in time. And Molly talks about it so calmly, as if she asked for a kilo of cookies and pretends as if she doesn't understand what's wrong with it and why they're all reacting like that. Even after she said again what she was interested in, he still asked again if he understood her correctly. Molly replied that everything was correct because the Driblin family was better and stronger than any family in the world, and also asked why they were asking such a strange question. Two guys started discussing what this child allows herself to do and whether she wants too much. So far, nothing is clear from the head's reaction. He reacts to everything like that regardless of the situation, so we need to wait for his answer. A couple of minutes passed, he realized what she was getting at, and then Molly thought, Maybe asking for a dribble was really too much. Out of the blue, he puts it to his face and calls it a beauty, as if it had just solved all his problems in an instant. The assistants had never seen him in such a state before. They don't understand what's so good about it, and they also thought that she was probably hypnotizing him, because it couldn't be explained any other way. Meanwhile, the man says that unfortunately, he doesn't have the opportunity to fulfill her wish yet, but he has something in return. From now on, she will have her own bedroom. She can choose any room on the second floor of the main building, which was expected from Dribbling. She knew, of course, but she did not expect that everything would happen so quickly. Anyway, she is very pleased. Everything went absolutely amazing. She thanked him for it and was pleased. And it seemed to him that this would not be enough. He began to think about adding more and then asked, "How old is she?" Only Molly can't answer this question because she doesn't know how old she is, so she'll have to guess. If she could turn into a human, then one could assume. But no matter how hard she tries, she cannot feel this eclipse. Therefore, she cannot become a human. Maybe it's all because she's an albino, or maybe there's some other reason for it. But unfortunately, no matter how much she thinks about it, she still won't be able to become human. She's waiting. Why did he ask how old she was and finally explain that he thought she could get a nanny? And after that, he asked her not to worry because if she didn't need it, then he wouldn't hire anyone. For some reason, he also thinks that there must be some way to turn her into a human. He is even ready to help with this and find a way to do it. And if it doesn't work out, the fact that she is part of the Dribbling house will not change, so you don't have to worry about it ever again. After that, Molly turned to herself that, despite everything, now she is really a part of this family. Now she can't let go, and every day she needs to prove that her existence is necessary for this house. And in the meantime, she said that there was something else that she needed from them. Everyone was scared at first, but then they thought that she couldn't ask for something like that a second time and calmed down. It turns out she just wanted to ask if they had a map by any chance, but the assistant replied that they only had one, and asked only not to say that there were still lands left that could be manipulated by the imperial family. The albino replied that he had misunderstood her because there was something much more important. She started pointing at different places in turn, but so far no one understands what Molly means. She explained that each one she pointed to would soon find themselves in an ambush, and that was something no one expected. Everyone found it strange that the child knew about the front lines and wondered whether she could be trusted. She started screaming at the top of her voice that they should believe her, because it was better than blaming themselves and others later for the fact that they had the opportunity to get rich and didn't take advantage of it. Molly reminded that last time they also thought that she couldn't know so much, and if this time nothing was done because of mistrust, it could be a huge mistake. If they get ambushed, she will suffer too, so there is no point in her lying, and they themselves should understand this. The boss at this point thinks that the more he watches Molly, the more it seems to him that she is perfect for this house, and also that he shouldn't take her words lightly, because if they hadn't listened to her last time, it would have been worse. He asked the Laparen without hesitation to immediately inform their troops and make sure that their messages were not intercepted. Someone started hinting that it might be too hasty, but the boss looks at Molly and doesn't think so. He asked the guy who doesn't understand a lot of things to think carefully about this, and also advised him to finally learn to listen to others. Because if everything that Mai offers them works, they will be able to save the lives of their soldiers. And if it doesn't, then at least they will confuse their enemies from the Holy Empire. And in short, they still have nothing to lose. It just takes time and that's all. The man also said that he really wants to believe this child, and she is incredibly pleased to hear this. He also ordered an immediate military council to be held regarding the front line, and asked her to go and choose a bedroom for herself. Of course, Molly would love to be recognized, but most of all, she doesn't want to disappoint those who believe in her. She really wants to believe that her prophecy will help them, because if not, she will be ashamed of it for the rest of her life. From that day on, as the chief said, she had personal quarters and she began to feel like a princess. Also, the gentleman took care of finding a nanny for her. Here she has already met her. This woman's name is Angelina. She is also a beast-like person, a lynx, and she was also given a personal maid, Linda. She is also a beast-like, a raccoon. She will be responsible for her outfits and bathing. That's not all. A little later, a personal guard came up. John. He's a real knight, and also a bear. Molly is delighted with her new life. She already feels how everything is changing, and she is even fed by an assistant and brings only what she ordered. From this day on, she will not have tasteless food, only what she likes, mostly sweet. Naturally, the freshest. Unlike yesterday, today Molly eats very well and her assistant is very happy about it. Linda is already starting to get indignant that she would also like to feed the lady. Even John can't leave this room. Everyone wants to stay here longer. Molly couldn't even imagine this before, but her popularity in the Dribblin' house is growing every day. Now she has a real dream life. Nothing is required of her. Just give advice that does not require a drop of effort. She is already interested to know if K-Rex knows about all this, because if he only saw what his father had done before her, he would not believe his eyes. After that day, he immediately inherited the position of the young head. Because of this, he became very busy, and the sea rarely sees him. Meanwhile, it was evening. Molly had already come to rest in the room. She just closed her eyes and heard someone entering the room. She got a little scared, opened her eyes, didn't even have time to see anything. K-Rex appeared in front of her. He apologized for disturbing her because he thought she wasn't sleeping yet at that time. He explained that he simply had no opportunity to see her at another time, and he also wanted to give her something. It's something magical, bright. It makes some sounds and it also shines with a bright blue glow, which is difficult to look at in the middle of the night. The guy called this little helper a golem. Molly doesn't quite understand what it's for and how to understand it all. It turns out that with the help of this assistant, they will be able to convey some information to each other with his voice. For example, when someone comes to wish each other good morning or good night. If you knock on his head twice, he will turn into a translator. Even if she speaks not quite clearly, he will still understand her. It must be a very useful thing. Molly promised that she would use it with pleasure and thanked for such an unusual gift. Some time has passed since then. They have not really spoken. She is a little sad about it, but he is probably very busy and Molly does not blame him for anything. Moreover, she is very pleased that he does not forget about her. Sometimes he passes on some words, but this still does not replace normal communication. A new day had come. The maids were doing their job. One of them accidentally turned her head to the side, saw how Molly was being held on her head and suggested her colleague to look at it because it was very cute. One of them had never seen this saint, so she asked her colleague if this was the same Molly everyone was talking about. Today she feels so special because something special happened a few days ago. There was a whole group in the forest discussing how the illegitimately born from the magical empire had become too self-confident lately. That evening, they wanted to put them in their place. Someone was even ready to bet that they did not expect such an ambush from them. Although in fact, while planning to set a trap, they found themselves in it themselves, and while they were talking about it, they themselves did not realize it. They were smiling as they discussed how their faces would soon be wiped off the ground, and at that moment the most interesting part began. The animals started to attack them. Their confidence disappeared somewhere in that very second, because one after another they started to fall to the ground. There was only one thing in their looks. Terrible fear and surprise. They called themselves strong, cunning. But as it usually happens, someone simply underestimated their opponent and began to claim victory ahead of time. A pack of tigers dealt with them in a matter of seconds. They reclaimed their territory thanks to Molly's prediction. As her prophecy said, the Holy Empire launched a surprise attack. But thanks to early warning and defense, they managed to hold back their onslaught. The story quickly spread in Dribblin, and eventually the albino became a local star. Everyone started discussing her. Some people like her, some don't. But she personally doesn't care at all what others think about her. Because as she already understood, it is impossible for everyone to leave. There will always be someone who is unhappy with something. Meanwhile, evening came. According to tradition, they began to bring her various sweets so that this day would end pleasantly for her. She has become so accustomed to these cookies that she can no longer imagine her life without them. They were specially purchased in huge quantities so that they would not run out in the next few months. Recently, an assistant accidentally noticed heart-shaped cookies in a store and immediately thought of buying a few kilograms so that she could have some of these in her collection. This time, the head of the family decided to come to her before going to bed. He probably wants to praise Molly or tell her how proud he is of her. She was already thinking about hearing something pleasant, but from his look, she felt that something was wrong and became very tense. He started by saying that it might come as a surprise, especially after everything she's done. But he still can't quite believe that she's a saint. It's really weird, because just a couple of days ago she heard from him that he believed her. It could mean that she's starting to have problems. Molly can't understand anything because she tried not to act suspicious and did everything so that she wouldn't have any problems with it. He started to explain that he never believed in the existence of higher powers anyway, so it didn't matter to him whether she was real or not. So that's what he wanted to say, and she already thought that she was caught. It's very good that everything turned out this way, and if he had delayed any longer, she would have completely lost consciousness. Now she feels much better. And in the meantime, he says that since things have turned out this way, he will spread the word that she is a real saint who came with spring and make sure that no one can look down on her. She thought it was some kind of villainous way of thinking, but nevertheless, it was good news. No one would be able to treat her like a nobody anymore. And as soon as real spring comes, and probably a peace treaty will be signed, which means that she will no longer have to predict all the ambushes. But it's too early for her to relax. She needs to work harder so that everyone knows about her, preferably sooner. Molly decided to lie down completely on his head, and he thought that she felt sick. The guy asked if everything was okay, to which she said that she just decided to rest and everything else was fine. And she also said that she was just thinking about thanking the chef for the pudding that she was served today. It was so amazing that she would eat it every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Molly didn't notice how comfortable she became with this man. She had been on his head for more than half an hour. The main thing is that he is comfortable, and as long as the assistant does not complain, she will happily lie here for a while. Suddenly, they both heard some strange sound that was impossible to ignore. Molly began to worry because something told her that something important was happening somewhere nearby. They immediately approached some room. Probably the sound comes from here, at least it seems so to him. Molly remembered that there was a kitchen here. She asked John to go there right away, and he had no choice. He had to do what she asked him to do. They just looked into the kitchen and saw the chef sitting on his knees and his assistants asking him not to take things to heart. It is not yet clear what is happening. The cook is in tears, but as soon as he heard Molly's gentle voice, he turned around and immediately felt ashamed of his appearance. He greeted her, asked what brought her there, and she said with a smile that she was very glad to see him and that she had something to praise him for example, for the wonderful pudding that morning. She explained that she had simply come to thank him again for today's delicious treat and also to wish him a good day. He immediately felt very pleased. He started crying again. This man, Jeff, the chef of the estate, he is one of those people with whom she has been trying to get closer lately. After all, even with the appearance of Rahim, he will not be able to spoil her food because of a good relationship, which is why she tries to support him in everything where it is appropriate. She even told him that if someone had offended him, he could only name the person and she would deal with that person. He started to cry even harder. He felt so good to feel her support that it was impossible to describe in words. At that moment, one of the cook's assistants asked her to look somewhere so that she could understand what was going on, because it would be very difficult to tell a man about it. She looked to the side and saw someone throw the most delicate pudding into the garbage barrel to spoil the cook's mood. Everyone knows how hard he tries with every portion of his food, and still they do this to him. So this pudding was the last straw for him. Molly thought that since they were heirs, then in the future she would have to marry one of them. It was incomprehensible to her how they dared to treat food like that, knowing about the situation and from the outside. And after all, as we know, a person's actions reflect his essence. She asked to name a specific person who did this so that she would know him and not marry him. This guy doesn't even know what to do. He tries to hint that he can't do this because it could cost him a lot. And then some guy comes into the kitchen. He recognized the albino and asked if this was the one everyone was talking about. Molly thought, couldn't she have just said hello normally? She felt uncomfortable with this person and already wanted him to leave as soon as possible. And then it started. He started asking if they were already going to tell him that he should marry some albino. And that sounded too rude. Molly thought that she could of course tell him that it was actually she who would be choosing her husband, not him. So she would not advise him to be so self-confident. Everyone around started greeting him, but he still acts like he's the boss here. At first, the albino didn't react to him at all, but then she heard how they addressed him and understood that this is the same Gerd who begged Rakin not to leave, the one who was on his knees and said that he was ready to do anything for her. In the original story, he was depicted as obedient, like a graceful person. She remembers that for sure, but now, unfortunately, it is very difficult to describe him like that. At that moment, she began to laugh in her dream on purpose because she knows this man very well, or rather, his weaknesses. He didn't understand how she could allow herself to do this. He asks what he said that was funny and starts getting angrier and angrier with each passing second. The assistant began to hint that he shouldn't behave like that in front of Molly, and she immediately became quiet and began to watch the reaction of this Gerd. And she also liked it so much that her assistant stood up for her that she would definitely make some kind of surprise for him, because he does his job simply amazingly. With him, she feels completely safe, and in the meantime, this boy is already waving his hand at her, because he is used to the fact that everything is allowed to him here. The assistant does not allow him to do this, because if the lady suffers, his reputation will suffer. Gerd started ordering her to apologize, and the guy slightly hints that he definitely won't get it, and the only person who should apologize to at least 2 people is him. The boy does not understand how the assistant can ignore him and take the side of the albino, whom he knows much less than him. He replied that he was not taking any side, but was simply trying to stop the fight, and asked him again to calm down. He no longer knows how to behave so that people take him seriously. Today, something has changed, and he really doesn't like it. His cries sound like a small child throwing a tantrum because he realized that no one cares about him anymore. Molly watches him calmly from the side, waiting for him to calm down, because arguing with him is clearly useless. And in the meantime, in order not to waste anyone's time, she asked directly if he had accidentally thrown her pudding into the trash right in front of the cooks. He boldly replied that he was the one who threw out the pudding, and then asked her what she was going to do with it. She answered him that no matter who he is a simple man, so she will talk to him the way she sees fit. Molly started by saying that instead of being grateful to the people who cooked him food, he dared to throw it away right in front of them, and that is a terrible act. Now he can only hope that next time he eats anything at all, and if he does, that the food is edible or at least warm. It is unacceptable for him to have some albino telling him how to behave, lecturing him, and the like. He had already begun to warn that if it happened that they got married, he would immediately lock her in the tower and she would spend her whole life there, trying to win his love. It sounded so funny that she almost laughed, but the assistant calmed her down in time and started talking to him himself. He said that it was too much, although Molly could deal with him herself, and with pleasure. If you think about it, when Gerd appeared in the original story, there were rumors about Lycanbim. The king of Lycanbimayu, Gerd's father, had countless concubines, and after some time these concubines were dragged into the tower. They spent their whole lives there, begging the king for mercy. And Gerd said that he never wanted to be like that. Said that he wanted to spend the rest of his life looking only at Rahini. Meanwhile, the assistant could not stand it any longer. He turned to the young master and warned that he was going to report this situation to the head because he had crossed all the boundaries of what was permitted. Well, this guy was terribly spoiled in the kingdom, so such a reaction is quite understandable. It would be strange to expect anything else from him. Molly believes that such people should be punished, and if necessary, she herself will gladly do it. She turned to him and asked who told him that she was going to marry him or accept this proposal from someone like him. She also said that there were many other candidates who were worthy of becoming her husband, besides him, who was so ill-mannered. Judging by the way he's still holding on, the guy must still want to be the heir, and very much so. It could also be that he is afraid of John, so he can't afford to get completely angry, and there is no place for such a timid person in Driblin. In the end, Molly asked John to leave here because there is nothing else to do here, especially if this guy stays here. So they went their separate ways. The assistant sat her on his head again, and they calmly went on about their business, and she would think of something else with the cook. In the original, he woke up as an alpha and was a strong candidate for the heir. It's just weird that the kingdom didn't help him wake up. This guy can just be paired with the Reihin and left alone. He is now thinking about how she could even dare to humiliate him like that. He has not been treated like that for a very long time, almost never. He is also very offended that she insulted him in the presence of all the servants, thereby lowering his reputation in a matter of minutes. In the end, he decided that she would pay for it, because no one dares to destroy his authority. Although even this sounds strange because, in fact, he has no authority. He just uses his status, like a little boy, because he knows that nothing will happen to him for it. Suddenly, he used some force, made some bird appear in the air, and grabbed Molly. She asks him what he is doing. She is very scared now because knowing this guy, he will not feel sorry for her. The impression is that he has completely gone crazy. He sees no boundaries in anything, anywhere and never. For him, it's some kind of joke. But for Molly, it could be so dangerous that he can't even imagine. John had to intervene. He knows that the boy can't use the Holy Spirit for fun, so he warns that if he doesn't stop it now, he will get into serious trouble. It just seems like these words didn't scare him at all. For him, it's all a joke and nothing more. It seems to him that he fixed everything this way, but in fact he acted like a child. It's very low and ugly on his part. If he had tried to solve this situation in words, maybe he would have earned some respect, but using magic is not a power. It is just the easiest method that he could use. So that the boy would better understand who he was dealing with, John warned that he had orders from the head of the house to protect the lady at any cost, so he was ready to fight this spirit. The child doesn't understand how the assistant can even take out his sword for this albino, who, in his opinion, is not worth it. Literally, a second later, he threw Molly back, apparently afraid that he could embarrass himself again. She felt so dizzy that she couldn't even open her eyes as warmth passed through her body. She really tried to abstain, but she no longer has the strength. Molly is determined to take revenge on him even in this state. She literally pounced on him, grabbed his ear and started biting him so hard that Gerd screamed throughout the house. I wondered how he would react to this. Because knowing him, he can only seem strong in words, but in reality he won't even be able to fight with her. As she thought, he started screaming so loudly that she almost lost her hearing and fell to the floor. Everyone who has free time has already gathered near the door. The maids don't believe that Molly did this to him. They never cease to be amazed at how a little albino can only have more courage than some who have the right to it. Unexpectedly for everyone, the head's assistant appeared here. He quickly decided to resolve this whole situation. He ordered to calm down, because if these screams continue for even 1 minute, he doesn't even know what he'll do with them, and he won't even bother to figure out who's guilty and who's not. As soon as these two became quiet, he asked them to follow him. The boy was already very scared because he did not think that it would end like this. First, the assistant took the child to the doctor so that she could treat his wound and do something about it. So he felt much better. And now the assistant wants to know how it all started and warned that if someone deceives him, he will regret it. He doesn't even have any ideas what could have caused such a fight. So he is very interested in listening to explanations. The boy started to say that it was she who had created all this chaos, and he also started to threaten that he would definitely tell his father about it. Meanwhile, the doctor said that she noticed a few scratches on both of them. But overall, nothing serious. After that, he asked the girl to leave the room for a while, and she only asked him not to be too strict with them. Then she asked to let me know when they finished the conversation so she could explain how to continue treating the wounds herself. Meanwhile, the four of them were left alone. Molly was feeling more or less okay, but the child was still very ashamed. The assistant started by saying that now that he knew they were both unharmed, he needed to hear what happened from the beginning. John suggested that he tell Molly instead because he understands how hard it might be for her right now. But the guy reminded him that he asked those two. They set this up so they should take responsibility themselves. Albino is confident that the guy will definitely say that he is a victim. And if this happens, not only she will suffer, but also John and the cooks. She thinks that she should turn this situation to her advantage before Gerd does. Suddenly, he started asking why he should explain anything, and I also said that he would report directly to the head of the house. The deputy asked the gentleman why the guy thinks he has the right to interfere with the head's daily routine, to which he replies that, in fact, he is his blood relative and has been allowed to do so since his very first birthday. Meanwhile, Molly started apologizing for causing inconvenience and trouble by biting this man, and explained that if he had behaved normally, none of this would have happened. But some people do not know how to admit their guilt and use magical powers even when they can do without it. And then it began. He began to teach her that such behavior is inappropriate, because if she gives in to instinct, then she is no different from an animal, and he also added that reason is what makes them human. She realized that she wouldn't achieve anything this way, so she started with the main thing that started it all, namely, that the boy behaved disrespectfully towards the cook. He threw the dessert in the trash right in front of his eyes. You can tell the guy was angry. He didn't think she would say anything about it, but she did it because it would be fair. The assistant asked for more details because he still doesn't quite understand what we're talking about and what pudding has to do with it. She told him everything as it was, and even that there were witnesses who could easily prove the truth of her words. Gerd started shouting that it was all untrue, that everything was wrong, but no one believed him anymore, and he couldn't understand it. John joined the conversation and started to confirm everything she said, which means that everything comes down to what it is like to be someone who can't admit their guilt. Molly is very pleased that she was not afraid and began to tell everything, but at the same time, inside she is very uneasy because everything can change at any moment. And even if everything is resolved, Gerd will want to take revenge on her and will perceive her as an enemy. And since she doesn't need any extra problems, it's unclear at the moment how to make everything so that everyone is happy.